Hi everybody, I'd like to talk about how I overcame the phobia I had that was quite vexing for decades. I had a very unusual phobia. It was actually one of the better phobias to have. It was of snails. All snails really, but mostly the garden variety garden snail that you see here in North America. And I was so phobic I couldn't even watch it on TV or a picture or anything like that. I was so incredibly phobic of them. And it all started, I think the first thing started when my brother, one time he was riding his tricycle out in front of the house, and he came across a snail that was in his path, and he got off the tricycle and he ran over my dad, seeking help. He was a really little kid, and I was even smaller than him, and it kind of stuck with me, I guess. But I wasn't phobic at that time. But later, when I was about 4 years old, we were out house hunting. We were looking at this house. We were getting a new house, and it had rained earlier in the day, and there was this juniper bush in front of it. And as I was walking on the sidewalk, I saw this like translucent thing, and I thought it was like a toy, like a gummy toy or some kind of. It looked intriguing. So I reached for it and I grabbed it, and I saw in my hand it was a snail, a full-grown snail, garden variety garden snail, and I totally freaked out, and I jerked out and I dropped it. I threw it down, and I wiped my hands, and I felt this disgust and this fear. And ever since that moment, I had that irrational fear of snails, and it carried on. The good thing about having a fear of snails rather than like spiders is snails never go in the house. They don't want to go in the house. It's too dry, and there's nothing to eat, nothing for it to eat anyway. So that's good. But then where I grew up, there were snails all over the place every now and again, sometimes better or worse, and I tried to deal with it as best I could. Sometimes, like, I had a fort in the backyard, and if it was raining, a bunch of snails would come out. I'd ask my dad to pick them out, or my brother to pick them out, because ironically he didn't have a phobia, even though that tricycle incident, he didn't have that thing that was registered in his nervous system, but I did. And it followed me along. Like I remember one time my mom and I eating at a Caro's, and they sat us down, and there was the planter right next to it, and there was a snail stuck to the window, and I'm like, can we sit somewhere else? Let's get a new seat. I couldn't handle it. I didn't want to. First of all, I don't want to look at a snail's genitals while I'm eating, number one. But secondly, but anyway, along the spiritual path, this is one of those challenges I wanted to overcome. And I started doing exposure therapy. Like when I was on my walk, I'd see some snails. Like one time there was a fence post, and there was like dozens of snails all stuck to each other. And I took a picture of it, and I stood close. I got as close as I felt comfortable and looked at it as much as possible. And it probably, I didn't know it at the time, but it probably helped that I was, walking before and after, like with the EMDR benefits of walking. And I just kept at it, sometimes I would always go near a snail if I saw it, if I had time, if it was a good opportunity to do so. And then one day I had this amazing thing happen to me. I had a dream that there was a snail in my mom's room. And in the dream, I picked up the snail and I put it outside. The window was open and I put it on like a leaf or something. And I didn't freak out. I wasn't phobic in the dream. In the dream, I wasn't phobic. So I woke up and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And it was either that following day or the day after. It was something like that. We had rain, and in our backyard, hundreds of snails were there. I mean, hundreds. They were all over the place. And so I went out there and I saw, and there was still, trepidation, but no, I can do this. I'm not freaking out by them. And so one by one, I picked them up, put them in a bag, and tossed them in the trash. And it's a bad way for them to go, but I didn't know what else to do. And one of them, it was either that time or maybe later that week, I took a snail and I put it on my forearm, on the inside part of my forearm. And I also found snail pictures online, and I put them on as my desktop. And one of the things about the phobia was I was more phobic towards larger snails than smaller snails. They still got my fear up, but the bigger the snail, the more afraid I was. But I had less fear of pictures or seeing a snail with a conical shell. It was just something about that. These phobias are irrational. That's why they call them phobias, irrational fears. And the snail and a phobia is like the most irrational of all, because what is it going to do? Get its slime on you? It can't do any damage to people unless you eat it raw or something, and I wasn't about to do that. Oh, by the way, when I was a kid, I would have dreams of being in the school lunch area, and my mom had packed me a bag full of broken snails. So there I'd be like eating the guts and the snails in the bag. In the dream, I'm not phobic. I'm just dutifully eating the snails. But then when I'd wake up, the taste of the snails in the dream would be that bad taste in my mouth in the middle of the night, And I don't know why that didn't. I probably didn't erode the phobia, because eating a bunch of snails from a bag like that's pretty disgusting. But and another thing, I often would, like in the middle of the night when I would go to the bathroom, I couldn't help but imagine a whole bunch of snails down on the floor. And so sometimes I would literally like jump off the bed, try to get to the door so I didn't have to, the kid's imagination is so strong. Even though I knew they weren't there, I was still freaking out. And I hated stepping on them too. It's like, I did hate snails actually because of this phobia. I really hated it. I wish, why couldn't they all be, warm and fuzzy and cuddly and stuff? But they are what they are. And so basically, anyway, I wouldn't like stick one in my mouth or anything. and I might get a twinge or something, but I could easily put a snail on my hand now, and I think they're really cute. Anyway, it was like one of overcoming a phobia that's been so big in my life for so long, that's like altered my life in small ways, because it's awkward. But it was kind of like a sign that I can do stuff. I can change things. I could change my behaviors and how I think about things and act. And there's hope. So anyway, I just wanted to tell you that story and overcoming phobias. So thanks for watching.